It had been a really lazy, nothing-to-do kind of day. Katie discovered that sometimes even reading a book seemed like a lot of work. Orbie found out that you can think of a whole lot of things to do just lying on the floor. And they both learned that if you started counting all the pieces of wool in the carpet, you would be there a long, long time. In the middle of the afternoon, Katie and Orbie had done everything that they could think of. Mom gave them each an ice cream cone, and they sat out on the front steps eating them. Yi Ping came over and sat with them, and so did Andy. And, well, soon a lot of their friends were sitting on the steps, and every single one was thinking the very same thing. There was nothing to do. Just as Arthur was saying that it was the most boring day in his whole life, Mrs. Perrette walked by. She was delighted to see all the friends having so much fun together. When Orbie burgled that they weren't exactly having fun because they had nothing to do, she stopped in her tracks. She just couldn't imagine such a thing. With a whole bunch of friends, there were tons of things to do. The friends all looked at her glumly. Dad popped his head out to see if they'd thought of anything yet, and everybody, including Mrs. Perrette, shook their heads. At that moment, Tom rolled down the street on his rollerblades. Seeing Tom gave Mrs. Perrette a splendid idea. She told everyone that when her children were young, they used to play street hockey out in front of Tom's house. Tom lived on a cul-de-sac. That meant the street ended and there was rarely any traffic at all. There was absolute silence for a minute, and then all of the friends at the same time burst out in a loud cheer. Street hockey was the best idea ever. Of course, Katie did have to point out that she really didn't know how to play, and Yi Ping added that she didn't either, and, well, suddenly everybody realized that they weren't too sure how to play street hockey at all. Mrs. Perrette smiled broadly. The thing about street hockey was that you didn't have a lot of rules, and the only thing that mattered was that everybody had fun. In seconds, the entire group of friends disappeared. Soon they were all gathered at Tom's with hockey sticks and even ordinary sticks, and everyone was ready to play. Mrs. Perrette walked down the street toward the crowd with a great big beach ball. Tom grinned and chuckled. He said, "This is going to be fun," he told the others. Well, Mrs. Perrette explained that all you had to do was get the ball through the other team's goal, and the fun of it was it didn't really matter how, except that you couldn't actually touch the ball with your hands. Orbie tucked his hands behind his back to remind himself. At each end of the explanation, Tom set up the goals. They were marked with garbage can lids, which everybody thought was very funny. Then Mrs. Perrette divided the friends up into two teams, and the fun began. She would be the referee, and she blew a little whistle to start the game. She threw the ball into the center, and Orbie was so excited. He forgot to use his stick, and he gave it a great big kick. He looked at Mrs. Perrette as the others chased the ball. He thought that he had done something wrong because hockey was meant to be played with sticks. But Mrs. Perrette told him he'd done a wonderful job, and with that he was a pink blur chasing the ball. Katie hit it once, and instead of going anywhere, it shot right up into the air and bounced off of Dad's head, and everyone laughed, including Dad. Well, the ball shot up and all over the place. Sometimes it was hit toward one of the goals, and then another player would hit it back. Tom shouted encouragement, and Dad was calling to players on both sides. He was helping them to see what they could do. At the next play, Dad whispered something to Katie. She giggled, and everybody wondered what it was. When the whistle blew, Dad picked Katie up and chased after the ball. Katie kicked the ball, and finally, Dad held her right over the ball, and she picked it up with her legs and Dad held her up and hurried to the goal. Tom, who was the goalie, tried to stop Dad, but he was laughing so hard that Katie was able to toss the ball right through. And when they looked back over the game field, everybody was sitting on the ground laughing. Street hockey, with almost no rules, was turning out to be a whole lot of fun. Then Arthur had a terrific idea. He whispered to Orbie, who nodded his head and got ready. And when the ball was thrown into the center again, Orbie held it still, and Arthur bent down and scooped the ball up inside his big baggy shirt. And he ran for the goal. Again, everybody thought it was so funny, and I have to say, it looked really silly. And when he got to the goal, Mom was there, and she picked Arthur up and tried to shake the ball out. Arthur was laughing so hard. He had tears in his eyes. In fact, Mom did shake the ball out, and the ball bounced right between the garbage pail lids. Arthur's team cheered and jumped up and down. I have to tell you, the whole street had fun that day, and in the end, Dad invited everyone over for a barbecue to celebrate all the great players in the game. So the lazy, nothing-to-do day turned out to be one of the best days of that summer. And I have to tell you that a few weeks later, they had another game and then the neighborhood championship, which everybody won. Mrs. Perrette gave out huge buttons with ribbons on them, and soon the street hockey game became an annual event, which meant they played it every year. And you know, if street hockey sounds like fun to you, you should ask your parents to find a safe place for a game and invite your friends to play. I just happen to know that if you do, you'll have a lot of fun, just like Katie and Orbie did.
Did you know? Practice really does make perfect. Most of us aren't immediately good at things that we try. Sports, music, and even things like reading aren't always easy for everyone. That's why we have to practice. The more you do something, the better you get. And someday, you may be the best.